I'm Hikaru Nakamura. You're watching the Sinquefield Cup live in St. Louis.
And we are back at the 2014 Sinquefield Cup, and we just saw an interesting sequence by Nakamura, who just introduced the show for us.
Right.
Against Caruana.
Well,
Instead of this bishop d6 move.
we were licking our chops about this possibility of bishop d6. We really were warming up to this pawn sacrifice for Fabiano, and we thought that with that move, it's a bold move, but it's a righteous one, and Black was going to seize the initiative in this game. Instead, Fabiano disappointed us with a move that we simply didn't like. He played the move queen c8, defending the pawn on b7, but making it that much more awkward for him to attack on the dark squares, and especially this pawn on d4. Now, remember when I was saying that Miguel Najdorf reached across and slapped me on my hand for sticking my knight in front of my bishop? Well, guess what?
You get unslapped?
You get unslapped.
Or unwiggled.
Unwiggled. The knight dropped back, which is a loss of a tempo, and it looks like an awful move. However, once the knight does get coordinated and back to the c3 square and bishop to d2, white could be back in business, and surprisingly the computer absolutely approves of the move knight b1, and the computer says that's the best move.
Well, Caruana mirrored actually Nakamura in that situation and played the knight b8 himself. So you were hating on that queen on c8, but maybe it can get into h3 one day. And of course also...
Well, first we have to trade on d4.
Oh, he traded on d4 first,
yeah,
yes.
Of course.
Yes, so that our e5 pawn isn't hanging, and then played knight to b8.
Right, exactly.
And this is the position that we have in front of us now.
Right, and okay.
Oh, actually a few more moves have been played.
Indeed, they
so
have.
So knight c3, knight c6, and bishop e3 are now all on the board. So both players kind of untangling, and now perhaps the logic of queen c8 is that the queen can get into the game now on h3 at the right moment. But really the queen is just doing single duty over there, right? There's no pieces to kind of join her in the fun, and b7 and d5 would then be kind of woeful.
Yeah.
So probably a little bit more solid, perhaps just moving the queen to d7 and then getting our rooks into the game on e8 and c8.
Yeah, developing the rooks on e8
and while
and c8.
Black doesn't look like has any serious issues, it wasn't really what we had before, and now white does have the two bishops.
Exactly.
And has untangled.
Possibility of getting the advantage of the two bishops. I do see an opportunity, because Maurice was mentioning it many times, of trying to gang up on this pawn on d4, so there's an opportunity for bishop d8, bishop b6. But I think the worst has passed already. If Fabiano had an opportunity to seize the initiative, it's passed, and white actually, I'm starting to like white. Maurice, do you see it the same way?
Absolutely, as white is jumping up and down that he got a chance to get his bishop out. The moves were just donated to him after these last couple of moves by white. So the first time we've seen Caruana not play so precisely, and maybe the psychology of playing a difficult opponent is working against him in this game. He still seems pretty confident, moving quickly. He did play queen to d7 in this position, but he certainly did not look smooth there. Queen to c8 was not a great-looking move. Bishop to d6 would have been what we'd have expected from him, the way he's been playing in this tournament. And now we see this problem. Remember we talked about the threat on the dark squares, this d pawn being a weak pawn, and this knight not being connected to it. We liked having that knight on c6 so long ago. Now he's wasted two tempi, knight here, knight back to go to c6. That did not leave a great impression. He's also wasted a tempo playing the move queen over to d7, to c8, only to go to d7. And these two minors are still miles away from this pawn. This bishop happily leaping into the game, ready to go to f2. And after this rook moves, by the way, maybe to d1, this bishop could slide back and find a target on the d5 pawn as well. This piece will be unstoppable, unassailable, because black has nothing to challenge it in the position. A bishop on a2 could just lurk there forever, and you cannot bother it. So Caruana's going to have to be careful here. The longer the game goes, the more the two bishops will make their presence felt. And I think Nakamura is happy. Even if the computers are saying this is an equal position, I think Nakamura is happy to see this position on the board for sure. Guys?
Wow, yeah, indeed. It makes sense, I guess, that the players mirroring each other would benefit the player who's behind on development, right?
In that case, it had been Hikaru, so he caught up and he's a happy camper.
And meanwhile, over in Topalov's game versus Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, you like this bishop on e5, so Topalov, trying to kind of halt it a little bit or halt some of the potential ideas on the b2 square, has played the move c3. And now the question is how to improve his pieces. I like the idea of somehow, it seems that somehow he needs to get that bishop on b5 into play or maybe creep in with the queen. How do you increase this position from White's point of view? Queen,
I don't know. I
would
would say
to g4, does that even threaten anything?
Sure. I would say that what's actually happening is that Black is in the midst of taking over, and in a kind of a funny way. Normally you use a rover as a means of attacking Black, the opponent's king. In this particular case, what I'm seeing is happening is Black is using a rover as a means of not only blunting White's attack on the king side, but basically what Black needs to do is get both of his rooks over here on the king side and try to even work on just winning a pawn over here on h2. This bishop on b5 is a good blockading bishop, but it's not ever going to be able to threaten anybody. If the bishop ever does find a good diagonal, so what? The king will just move to h8 and he'll be perfectly safe. So I'm just seeing all kinds of ways for Black to increase his advantage, and I'm thinking...
Although on the other hand, your pawns are a little bit weaker. Like even in some weird variations, we could... we could move after rook f6, if we could remove our bishop and take on a5, you know, you're at the moment like looking like your queen might be a little bit overworked. I'm trying to find a way to take advantage of it. Like,
right. Well,
I want to be able to play like queen g4 and bishop d7 and try to get my bishop perhaps in, because that's really the big issue, right? Like my bishop on b5 is just doing diddly at this point.
Exactly.
Whereas your bishop on e5 is defensive and attacking. So if I can reroute it perhaps on the light squares, maybe I'm going to be the one who's doing well in this position, especially with some nice pawn structure, right? You've got more islands than I have. I mean, yes, you have more islands than I have.
Oh, I have 1, 2, 3. You have 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay. I counted wrong. But your pawn on a5 is weak. You know what I'm saying. Maurice, what do you think?
Well, that position looks fine for both sides, if you will. It's both players playing a very solid bishop opposite color position. But I've got to say that I like White's chances there because Black's not going to be able to demonstrate anything in that position. So even if White doesn't necessarily win the game quite easily, it seems as though Black really can only kind of put pieces on better squares, but can't break through with any pawn moves. The only pawn breaks on the king side. So Black's going to have to be careful-ish, but I don't think it's that much of a problem for him. However, there's some excitement going on in the game between Aronian and Carlsen. We saw this position as Aronian was trying to prove something here. Carlsen played queen c5, looking to trade queens. Aronian would have none of it with the move queen to c3. And then this move, a5, stopping the b4 move. So first pawn move, interesting move. Okay, rook d1, solid. And now h5 on the other side. Okay, no problem. What are you exactly trying to do here? Stop g4, maybe stop a knight going to this square. All right, given that. And after rook d3, now b5, 3 pawn moves in a row. We see this happen in the hedgehog, but not exactly those 3 moves. b5 certainly, h5 happens in the hedgehog as well. But this break, b5, that's a big one. That signals to Black. Black is sending a signal to White. I'm going to crack this pawn on c4 so that later I can play the move d5 and break through. So Carlsen's saying, I'm perfectly okay here. I don't know what maneuvers you've been doing, but I am breaking free. And it seems as though Aronian realizes that he's lost a little control. He supposedly have a Maroczy bind against that hedgehog with those pawns on e4 and c4, but that's about to change in the next couple of moves. And it looks like the #1 player is feeling pretty good about his chances. Guys?
Thanks, Maurice. Meanwhile, we have Taryn outside with some more inside info for us about what's going on in the Central West End.
Lovely. Oops, I
All
think
right, we'll
there's
get
a
back.
technical
I think she was with
difficulty on
the
that one.
Scholastic director, actually, Matt Barrett.
Exactly.
And one of the Scholastic directors here, Matt Barrett and Bill Thompson, both are running this amazing program, bringing chess
For all
to
the chess
thousands
coaches.
of kids in the city.
Yeah, I think we have more than 30 chess coaches that go out around the St. Louis area. I was just going to say, as a follow-up to what Maurice was saying about what Magnus Carlsen had done, I liked, in my career, I played the hedgehog as black numerous times, and whenever I got in the break b6, b5, as Magnus has done with his last move, I always felt that I had already gone a little bit past equality. In other words, I felt like I had won the initiative with black. So this last breakout move by black, b6, b5, I think Magnus is actually doing very well here. And Levon is going to be wondering, how did he let his position slip? Because this was a opening where black isn't supposed to get away with what he did, and Magnus did. He got away with it, and he's looking very fine indeed. I'll try to be a little bit controversial. I didn't think I was being controversial. I thought that in the game of Maxine, who is actually second on our leaderboard, was doing very well, and I'm a little bit surprised that the computer and Maurice both feel that white could be doing very well. Well, that's a position that I would love to put in front of a lot of grandmasters and take a poll. I'm pretty sure that Gary Kasparov would be on my team and champion black.
That's not a bad person to have on your team.
I'll
With white,
take
if only we can play queen g4 and bishop b7 and rook e5, we'll be in business. And speaking of being in business, Taryn, I think, is back with us, and
Alrighty.
she's got Matt Barrett from the St. Louis Chess Club and Scholastic Center.
Yes, thank you, Jen. You know, security isn't something you might think about at a chess tournament, but here Matt's going to explain we have security that's twofold, starting with the security officer at the door.
Correct. First, people have to check in at the front desk. You get your wristband, and then if you want to go upstairs and see the players, you need to get wanded here by the security guard. In addition, cell phones get checked in at the main desk. This is a distraction for players if there's cell phones in the room, and also because of various high-profile cheating incidents in chess, we take seriously the idea that everybody has to be cell phone free.
Yeah, I mean, that's something you think about. Nowadays, we basically have a mini computer in our pocket.
Especially as computers now are stronger than the strongest players, it's a precaution that should be taken. At this event, it's perfectly clear that these guys are going to play at a very high level independently of the machine. So.
Exactly. But one thing to keep in mind for people visiting, although the security is tight, if you will, it's very efficient. You move people through quickly to get into the areas they want to go to.
Right. Yeah, we just want to make it a great experience for everyone, and I think things have gone really smoothly so far.
Good. Good to hear. So it's safe, it's secure, and everyone's playing by the rules here at the Sinquefield Cup. Jen, back to you.
Thank you. Great little interview there with Matt Barrett about security. I thought he was going to be talking about scholastic chess, but really another fascinating topic here, that the St. Louis Chess Club, not only leaders in scholastic chess, but also leaders in showing the way that a chess tournament is run. And even when we know that we have players who would never cheat, still putting those precautions in, because you have to set an example for the rest of the world.
Well, not only that, but just to absolutely say this is not even for consideration. I remember I had retired from professional chess in 2003, and my comeback, I had played in the U.S. Championship, and somebody had asked me, what did you think was the biggest difference since your comeback? And I said, I got checked at security. In the old days, you wouldn't get waved with a wand or anything like that. But I didn't have a phone, but they wanted to make sure I didn't have any wires on me, so fine, go for it. But that was the biggest shock for me, was that what a powerful computer and how meaningful it could be during a chess game. So you absolutely want to put that out of consideration. By the way,
actually, we do have your move. Your rook f6 move has been played.
Right, and so this is a very natural move, as black wants to play. Max wants to play this move, rook g6, absolutely neutralize any play along the g file. You were mentioning that you would, if you were in white shoes, you would like to get in a move like queen g4 and try to maybe bring this bishop, I don't know, perhaps to f5, perhaps to f6. Also, by the way, keeping this threat of queen takes g7 check and mate alive. But here the problem with the immediate queen g4 is we have rook g6, right? So we have to be a little bit more crafty, maybe play a move like queen h3. First of all, sidestepping rook g6, and of course not allowing this a blow.
A small advantage, why?
Right, okay, so if I were black, I'd probably get my king off the h file for just a second. I'm trying to set up a trap. Probably I'll end up trapping myself. But the trap that I was trying to set up was if you went for bishop d7 with some nifty little ideas of bishop f5 and checkmating me over on h7, I wanted to grab this pawn on c3 with a neat trick of my own. Queen to b6, attacking the rook on g1, and maybe allowing for rook takes c3 in the near future. So tricks and traps for both players in this variation.
Yeah, super messy. I mean, in that variation, I have rook takes g7, and
yes,
then king g7, bishop takes c8, and it's getting pretty wild.
Exactly.
That might end up being kind of good for me though, because I think I have like a rook b5 in a key moment.
Okay, so let's go back, and then we're tossing out king h8, I believe.
And after bishop d7, queen b6.
Queen b6. You wanted to toss in rook takes g7. King takes g7, and how did you figure it would go? Oh, now bishop takes c8.
Well, my idea is that if you don't really have bishop c3 because well, I thought that after bishop c8, bishop c3, rook b5 would be pretty good. Or rook g5 is also a possibility. It's kind of messy.
Yes, rook b5, rook g5.
Let's see. Let's slow down here. So anyway, just. To me, somehow it seems like it's going to have something here.
There's a lot of tricks in the position, and well, both players.
And meanwhile, we actually have a fun tweet about those of you who've been with us since round 1 here at the Sinquefield Cup. F3 knight, just locked myself out of my apartment while the Sinquefield Cup was going on, climbed up a ladder and through a window to get back inside, and apparently the police didn't think that you were breaking into your own home, so you're now happily watching us. Thank you.
Clever chess players.
Maurice, with some thoughts on that?
Dude must not be living in New York City, because that wouldn't have worked. That wouldn't have worked out too well for him. Well, we just want to jump to the key game of our day, and we see something going on that we talked about a long time ago, and Caruana is following exactly that idea. Remember, we said in this position, once the dark square bishop, the light square bishop had been traded, the dark squares in white's position could potentially become weak. Particularly the one target in the game, this pawn on d4. So the game proceeded with castles, castles, queen b3, and then this move we didn't like too much, queen to c8, bishop d6 looked better, the knight b1, and we saw the exchange, and now the d4 pawn, and I said, well, how's he going to get at this pawn? It's going to take him forever to do so. Well, first knight b8, and after knight c3, knight to c6, the first guy attacking this pawn, and now after bishop to e3 defending, queen d7 defending his own weakness on d5, and now rook a d1, putting some more defense to this pawn right here. I expected the bishop to go back to b1 shortly, but after rook to d8, reinforcing the defense of this pawn on d5, rook f e1, and now knight to e8. We wondered, how was this knight ever going to attack this guy? Well, look where it's headed. From e8, it's going to the c7 square. And now it's headed to e6 to capture this pawn. Now, the move knight c7 was played, so I should say queen c2 did not happen, actually. After knight to e8, the move played in the game was bishop to f2. Still, knight to c7 was played, and then bishop to f1, and now bishop to f6. And now he's gotten two guys on the pawn, looking soon to try to get the third guy on the pawn and really force white to defend this pawn. Now, at the moment, it's not going to be so easy for him to move the knight because of the move bishop to h3. Also, the b pawn is hanging, but he does have the possibility, for example, if f4, trying to test this knight, playing the move rook a b8, and if bishop to g2 to attack this pawn, now b5. And after b5, he's threatening things like b4. Sooner or later, he might put his knight on e6 at the right moment. But for now, he's clamping on that pawn. And remember the point we made, this bishop could not defend the dark square pawn. So right now we have a couple of pieces tied down to that defense, but here comes some queenside initiative for black. So he took a lot of time to get here. He wasn't really challenged by white at all, particularly with this bishop that went passive. And now it looks as though black is slowly but surely getting back into the game and focusing on that point, that dark square weakness in white's position. Guys?
Thank you, yeah.
Personally, I love this type of chess, maneuvering chess. It was the games of Tigran Petrosian that I admired so very much because of he would get a lot of closed positions or semi-closed positions, and I loved his maneuvering style. And there were times I just couldn't understand it, but then his opponent would end up being totally tied up. And Hikaru's got to be a little bit careful here. There aren't any attacking motifs on the king side. It's not like you can blow up a sector and divert black's attention away from the d4 pawn, because as Maurice is explaining, it's such an easy, straightforward progression of ideas for black. Black's just starting to focus his pieces against the pawn on d4, and white's opportunities to distract him, let's say, just don't exist at the moment.
You know, Topalov has made an interesting move, one that I didn't consider. Instead of trying to improve the bishop on the king side, it seems like maybe he's just trying to make it work a little bit on the b5 square where it stands now. So Topalov has played this move, queen f2, perhaps hinting at the idea of playing queen a7 and just going after some pawns, some of the weak pawns, thinking that he can hold on to all these bishop c3 ideas, right? And now b6 was played. And
just defending the pawn on a5.
Exactly.
Right.
And now maybe white's going to try to get the play here by going after that pawn on b6.
You mean you're
removing
thinking
the bishop
that,
and then playing rook b5, for
bishop
instance.
d3, rook b5 type of ideas, yeah?
Yeah.
Something like this, and maybe one day finding a
Bishop
better
c2,
diagonal
b3, yeah.
for the bishop. Okay.
I mean, the move with tempo, bishop a6, doesn't really do much because you can just attack it and then...
Well, you may even just push me to the b8 square, and then you're not really going to even be threatening.
Unless I judge that on b8 you're less active, so I want to insert those moves. But it seems fine to just play bishop d3 immediately right here. Unless, I mean, although yeah, it's a question that maybe there's a bishop c3 and queen c3 here that gives it too much play. So maybe it is wise to stick in bishop a6 first.
Right.
You know, and then just.
As you like, bishop a6. And
and that has been played. So Topalov did play that because yeah, I think bishop d3, bishop c3 looks a little. I don't know. Is that anything?
You mean bishop takes c3 here? That would be a surprise.
Oh, you just have rook c1, yeah. You just have rook
me,
c1 right away.
Yeah, you walk into a pin. I don't think that's going to work. So bishop a6, I don't quite fathom why the bishop needs to go here, but okay.
Maybe even if bishop c3 doesn't work now, maybe it'll work a little bit later. So he thinks actually that the rook is worse on b8, perhaps.
Okay, so let's say I go rook b8.
Go
I mean,
instead.
I'm just going to do what I wanted to do, which was just bring my rooks into the game over on the king side by playing moves like rook h6 and rook f6. So I invite you, if you want, I don't think you want to do it with your bishop on a6, but you could, if you like, play rook b5. I'll go back. And just got to be a little bit careful about your bishop. Queen a7 might snap it off.
Yeah,
so now bishop d3, for example,
yeah.
just so that you can shift backwards and forwards if you like. All right. I like black's position. And
instead rook b8 was played instead of rook f8.
Rook b8 was played. Boy, talk about ultra careful. The pawn on b6 wasn't even being double attacked, and he defends it in anticipation of rook b5. Okay, so now I guess you're happy to go back and try to relocate your bishop maybe to a better diagonal with bishop d3. So far, so good.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, so here I'm not so sure I like my king on g8, and I'm thinking that it's going to be useful at some point that my king just should step off the light squares.
Because if I ever stick queen h4, and I would be threatening rook e5 and queen f6. So
yeah,
just does seem more prudent on
right.
the h8 square.
King h8, and let's see, how on earth are you going to improve your position? I have lots of ideas of how I would like to improve black's position, by the way. So you tell me what you think white should do at this moment. I'll tell you in advance that my idea is to play rook h6, queen d8, and queen h4. That's what I'm aiming for. What active plan does white have?
To try to figure out a way just to keep the pressure on the b6 pawn, so that you won't be able to easily do that maneuver for one thing.
Okay, so you
So
tell me how
I think
to do
starting with sticking our rook on b5.
Okay, rook to b5 as telegraphed, I should say, rook h6.
Yeah, no, you know, it's a moment I can also play rook g4 if I'm worried about if I am worried about your idea there as well, queen h4.
Right. So rook g4 to protect any ideas of what I was angling for. You have a rook g4, and you tell me, do you feel that your rooks are coordinated?
No, I mean, I would prefer to maybe, I'm trying to figure out a way to put even more pressure on b6, and I'm struggling. But it just seems like bishop c2 at some point I should probably play, though, just to clear the line, because maybe at some point I'll be able to play rook d1. I
agree. Bishop c2, I do think that your bishop on d3 is not effective. I think it would be far more effective on this diagonal, the b3. We'll call it the Italian diagonal. And the players might end up in a position where they're mutually stuck. That is to say, they put the pieces on their most effective square, and then they can't really come up with a greater plan.
Well, because neither of us have targets against the king, which is usually critical in these bishops of opposite color middle games, you know, to get an edge. It's usually nice to have some way to actually attack the black king or the white king, and both of us are pretty well covered.
Right. So queen d8, and again, I'm telegraphing that I'll probably have to take along g7, g6, but I do want to play a queen h4 in my future. So what do you reckon? Bishop b3, Jen? Or do you want
we can play
bishop b3? Unfortunately, my immediate queen h4, I got a back rank problem I have to deal with. Rook takes b6, I'll lose my queen, but rook takes b8 is checkmate. So I have to preface my play with g7, g6.
Yeah, now your rook on h6 looks a little funny if you don't get to play queen h4.
Yes.
So maybe this is a moment for rook g4, although that rook doesn't look too coordinated either.
Okay, and so we're kind of getting ourselves stuck a little bit.
This game is probably going to go on for a little while, I would predict.
All games are fighting games. And Maurice, your thoughts?
Yes, it does look like the main problem in that position is the lack of pawn breaks. It doesn't seem as though you can overwhelm the player on your own color. The opposite colored bishops generally mean with the presence of major pieces that one side will try to overwhelm the other side on their color complex, the color complex of the bishop that they have. But in that position, it just looks like there's no way to really put pressure on the white squares for white and on the dark squares for black. On the other hand, some deep maneuvering strategies happening in the game between Carlsen and between Caruana and Nakamura. There I go calling Carlsen Caruana. I'm switching up again. Caruana and Nakamura. This game has been featuring these knight maneuvers, these weird backward knight maneuvers. You saw Caruana bring his knight to e8 and then to c7. And in this position, he was looking to maybe get his knight here and get a pawn and get an attack on this pawn, but he has to be careful about the move bishop to h3. And in this moment, Nakamura played queen a2, another retreating move. Very interesting idea. He's going to deal with the move b5 himself with the move b4. If rook a b8, for example, he gets to play b4, and his queen will come back into the game along this second rank. Another strategy he had is to put his bishop on g2 and play for f4. Check out the confidence of black in this position. He just played the move g5. Like, talk about coming out of nowhere, this move. G5 trying to clamp down on this pawn structure to make sure that bishop G2 and F4 never happens. That's how confident he is about this position, that he can make a move like G5 that just seemed unnecessary with a compact pawn structure. Not to be outdone, Nakamura said, well, I played Queen A2 for a reason, and now B4 has been played. So this game starting to stretch these players a little bit. You see G5 and its twin, its mirror image on the other side, B4 being played, so the game is definitely heating up. Both of them looking for victory here. You could tell no draw today between these two players. If it's a draw, it's going to have to be a bitter fighting one, and it's really getting interesting in this game between Caruana and Nakamura here. A first place player, first of all, and one at -1, but looking pretty confident is Nakamura here at the Sinquefield Cup in round 5. Guys?
Wow, what a gorgeous shot right now of the two competitors. Nakamura looking so intense.
Exactly. Well, things definitely heating up on the marquee matchup for the overall leadership. And Fabiano, I'm not sure that he needed to allow this expansion on the queen side. He did play the move G6, G5, a move I kind of feel that he could have paused with. He could have stopped B2, B4 with his own A7, A5, a move before. He probably felt that he didn't have to do that, taking less control of the B5 square. But what has happened after the inclusion of these two moves is Hikaru's taken some commitment, let's put it that way, about the C-file. Let's see, for example, rook on A8 to C8. For the moment, I just have to be careful that I don't have a whoopsie-daisy to bishop H3. But for the moment, I'm bringing my rook to the open file. I'm preparing, as Maurice has been mentioning time again, to play knight E6, concentrate on this D4 pawn, and now that the pawn on B2 B4 has committed itself, the knight on C3 is not adequately defended. So Fabiano could be just say rook A C8, prove to me why the move B2 B4 was a good choice.
And instead, Fabiano played G6, it appears.
He's played after the move B4 G6? Mm-hmm. Wow, okay, so I'm seeing a different idea for Fabiano. Maybe his idea was to play King G7 and possibly swing his rook over to H8 and maybe line up some firepower against the H2 pawn. That's a completely different approach than what I would have done. I would have gone for the open C-file. But G7, G6, King G7 deserves consideration.
Interesting. Yeah. So show us how you might try to triple up or double up there.
Well, let's see that. Well, first of all, I'm not really sure what Hikaru should do. I'm not totally impressed by this knight on C3. So let's say I
just go back to B1 and D2.
No.
Circle back again.
No.
So you want to go knight A4, knight C5?
No. I don't want to allow a knight takes D4. Okay, in terms of tripling up, let's say I just make a bishop G2, King G7. And now let me play some soft moves for a moment so we can see at least what a potential idea from Fabiano is he wants to play rook H8 to H7 and bring this rook on A8 over and create a battery against the H2 pawn, and if Hikaru's not careful, that pawn could get wiped out. So this is what I believe Fabiano has in mind, starting a kingside initiative with a battery down the H file.
It's harder than you would expect to find these active plans for white, right?
Right. After G7, oops, sorry, I beg your pardon. After G7, G6. I'm
looking for a way to attack something, like put pressure on the G5 pawn, maybe getting my queen back into the game instead of B3, trying to play like bishop E3 and queen D2, just so that tickle your pawn on G5 a little bit as you prepare to play king G7 and rook H8.
Right, and also the move B4 I'm not really finding the move b5 compelling, because I think that all that move really accomplishes is just to chase the knight, actually, to a pretty nice outpost over here on f5. So I don't see b4, b5 as being in White's favor.
And then keeping b5 as a potential target later.
Exactly.
Well, we have all this happening via our Chess24 app, so if you're on your phone, you can actually watch the Sinquefield Cup on the Chess24 platform. And we've got Taryn outside who's going to give us a little demo of that.
Wonderful.
Yes, Jen, like you said, make sure and go and download the Chess24 app. We have the most interactive chess broadcasts ever going on. As you can see, you can view the live broadcast. You can also view the standings of the tournament. And it gets really interactive when you go view the games. So whichever game you're interested in, click on it. And it'll bring up the board in real time. It'll show you the play clock, where all the pieces are positioned. It'll also show you the history of the moves from the game. And you can get even more interactive by clicking and making your own moves, just like this. So make sure, go and download the Chess24 app in the App Store.
Hey. You got a little photo bomb there, Taryn.
Yeah,
she got photo bombed.
in the back there.
Oh, that was great, though. That does look really fun.
Yeah,
so you can
nice
just do that
app.
anywhere. You don't have to. You could get locked out of your house, and as long as you still have your phone or your iPad, you won't need a ladder to climb back in.
Well, after looking at that, I now understand why security is so important. I mean, you know, it's so easy to see the move and the computer analysis. It's right there, one touch, and you can see exactly the evaluation that the computer is giving.
Well, as these games kind of heat up and head towards time control, we are going to take another break, and as usual, we have a little puzzle for you, so keep your chess brains working, and we'll be right back for more from the 2014 Sinquefield Cup here in St. Louis.
I'm Levon Aronian. You're watching the Sinquefield Cup live here in St. Louis.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the 2014 Sinquefield Cup. We are covering round 5 action, which means that it's the midpoint of the tournament, and tomorrow is a rest day. So don't tune in tomorrow at 2:50 Eastern, but do tune in on Tuesday when we resume with round 6. Now, how many of you saw that position, Fabiano Caruana?
I hope you all did, because it's so blatantly, obviously, what you've got to do.
Oh,
Maurice, how do you
we
do
have
it?
players of all levels watching this broadcast. Some of them deserve kudos.
Absolutely.
Maurice?
I love it when a 4-time U.S. champion says, oh, it's so blatantly obvious what you have to do. Of course, in this position, you need to sacrifice your rook for this bishop, sacrifice in exchange, win the dark squares, and on the very next move, don't do a check, don't threaten anything, just plunk your knight down on f6 and watch the guy suffer because your attack is overwhelming. Well, certainly this was not that easy, as certainly the grandmasters in the audience and the strong players who found this move will appreciate that black is going to die. There's no development on black's side whatsoever, and a queen and a rook are about to emerge on the position and assault that king. The game continued with the move g4, which has absolutely nothing to do with what's about to happen to the black king. Queen check, king to c7, and now queen to f4 check. The dark square problem that white was able to exploit because of the sacrifice is now just simply fatal. Black resigned here because obviously king back to d8 would run into queen d6 check and mating on the next move. And after queen f4 check, if the king had gone to b6, well, guess who's coming to dinner? The rook shows up on b3 with check. King a5 would be forced, and look at those dark squares just get pummeled, and after king up, then mate. So nice sacrifice, rook takes on d8, followed by the quiet knight to f6. Easy moves, right? For guys like Yaz.
Domination. Nice example there by Caruana against a very, very awkward opponent, Grandmaster Jabova. A scintillating victory there.
An awkward opponent?
Oh, yes. It's so difficult to guess what Jabova is going to play. He's really an original player.
Okay, I was trying to clarify what you meant by awkward.
Awkward is in terms of your ability to defeat him.
Gotcha,
Yes.
Gotcha. One of our players, actually MBL, played a game against Joe Bava at Olympiad that just went on forever. It was like a 120-move game.
Wow. Yes.
And it looked like it was going to be a draw, and then somehow Maxime won the game. It was kind of incredible.
Crazy tactics at the end, by the way.
Now, we have a couple of interesting tweets coming in. Nigel Short joins us again and says, how disappointing. I expected to see at least a couple of piece sacrifices in today's Sinquefield Cup. Have I been spoiled?
Yes.
No, we just need to give the stratagems a shout out, right?
Right. Give them an opportunity to outmaneuver one another.
And then we have Jan Gustafsson, who said he doesn't like Aronian's position at all anymore. We've got Hip Hop Chess, who says that he's watching the Sinquefield Cup with his daughters. He loves the games and the coverage, and he's missing St. Louis. That's Adisa Banyoko, who was here in May and will be back, in fact, to do an exhibit at the Hall of Fame about hip hop and jazz and history. And it's nice that he mentions his daughters and inspiring girls. I just heard some breaking news that a 10-year-old girl defeated a grandmaster in a U.S. Chess Federation tournament.
Oh my goodness.
And that might be a record. I mean, it sounds like it would be a record. That's Carissa Yip.
Wow.
She beat Grandmaster Ivanov.
Alexander Ivanov.
That's right.
Wow. Oh boy, 10-year-old.
But she's not watching the Sinquefield Cup, and now she is because she won the game. So
right.
Shout out to Carissa.
Bravo, bravo. And things are slow. There's definitely a slow round after all the thrilling games that we've seen. Definitely the players are taking a pause here. But that doesn't mean that they're not fighting very hard. And I agree with Gusti that Magnus, once he got in this b5, that really signaled that his troubles were behind him. And very slowly, if you notice that Magnus's pieces, this rook on b8 is more effective than any of White's rooks. This pawn on d6 is very well defended. There's even ideas of h5, h4 trying to break some dark squares.
But you'll have to be vigilant about knight g4 hopping into the position, one of white's only real ideas.
Right. So Levon thought he's seen enough. He played the move queen d4. This was a kind of a helpful move in certain ways for black, because after all, he was in an awkward pin. So with the move queen d4, and do we have another move? I'm sorry. Has a move been played by Magnus? No, not at the moment. So white's idea, I think, should be obvious. Let me make a poor move for black just for a moment. What white wants to do is get this pawn to e5, so that after a trade of rooks, he'll be able to play the move f4 on his next turn and cause some more pieces to be traded. And then in this case, white would be doing well. This is something that Magnus will want to avoid. Not a4, pardon me. I just was throwing in a move there just to demonstrate what white might be threatening. One move of interest would be the move e6, e5. After lots of trades, for example, trade, this rook on the d file may not be as effective as the rook on b2. Also,
well, maybe
this bishop on
trade, I'll play rook d6 or something.
Yeah, I can imagine that as being a reasonable move. Trades, and our bishop may be heading. Oh, now you've got knight d5. With your rook on d6, it's certainly more of a potent move. So rook d6. Trading, that looks like it's just going to be heading for a draw. I'm looking at this move, rook d8, Jen. I'm just thinking that this move's, well, it's not quite so clear. You could take on c6 in that final position.
Take on c6 and then...
Sorry, we're going to play rook, whoops, we're trying to play rook d6. So I wanted to play rook d8, and I just point out that white is not obliged to allow a perpetual repetition. He could play bishop f1.
Well, not only perpetual, it would allow you to snap on a2, give you that option.
Right. So here the pawn on c5 is hanging. So some weird endgame like this. Normally speaking, when black gets active pieces against this passive bishop, it's enough for a pawn, but it's definitely
not exactly what Magnus might be shooting for here.
Exactly. So we've got to come up with something a little bit better here for Magnus. Maybe just trading on d4.
Meanwhile, Maurice Ashley has something for us on the critical matchup for the standings. Will Caruana increase his streak?
Critical, important, and exciting developments on that board. Some wild chess taking place right now. We saw the move g5, and that had to have made Nakamura just shudder a little bit and say, whoa, wait a minute. What are you trying to do? I need to come after you. And he did. b4, g6, and then queen d2. The first piece eyeballing this pawn, but cool. Caruana played king to g5, and now b5, again, hyper-aggressive. The possibility of playing knight a5 was in the position, but Caruana found a deep idea, knight to e7, and after bishop to e3, now he's saying, alert, alert, I'm after this pawn, no problem, my knight will come over and defend. Wait a minute, let me pin your knight. The other knight shows up on f5, and now we finally, after years of research and maneuvering, we're able to attack this pawn 3 times with the 2 minor pieces and the bishop, but just at the right moment, the one piece that could not defend that pawn, this light square bishop said, get rid of this piece. Bishop takes knight, and after pawn takes, he followed up with the move f4. Quite interesting move, trying to crack open this structure on this side. So now the game has gotten extremely sharp. The engines are saying that black is for choice here by a lot, as a matter of fact. After the move g4, clamping down on white's king side, it's going to be very difficult for white to penetrate and get at this pawn in any way, shape, or form. Meantime, this h file is open. Black has the c file he can work with, and this d4 weakness, it has not gone away, and this bishop is looking like a huge pawn in the position. So it seems as though Nakamura has been aggressive, he's been active, but maybe he's just worse. Guys?
Sure looks to me like he's been outplayed here because black does have this nice grip on the king side. And if you look at white's bishop on e3, it's a fine piece in the sense that it's defending the pawn on d4, which is crucial. Bad bishops defend good pawns. But on the other hand, it's an incredibly passive piece. And black's play down the h file is self-evident. I think white has to be very fast. I'm thinking of the move queen d3, putting the pressure on f5, say king g6, which looks like a reasonable move, and something like rook d2, anticipating the attack against the pawn on h2, and maybe with the idea of maneuvering the knight quickly to the e3 square. I see Hikaru as being in trouble in this position, and it's not easy.
We can even divert ourselves and start attacking on the c file, rook c8, rook c4. You're going to have trouble defending everything.
Exactly, but it's one of those glacial attacks. It goes very, very, very slowly, but it eventually rolls over everything in its path. So I see great opportunity here for Mr. Perfect to maintain his winning ways. Oh my goodness. Quite a surprise. I mean,
with about 17 minutes left and another 10 moves in the time control, so not massive time pressure yet, but...
Yeah, I'm almost starting to think that this position starts to get so desperate, I start looking at
H3 with the idea of G4.
Precisely, desperado moves like H3, sacrificing a pawn, just to avoid what I see as disaster looming, but slowly looming, but something like this to break up what otherwise looks like is a very easy roller kind of position happening for
Right, because you're
Fabiano.
also bringing your king into H2.
Right.
So G4 in this position, so let's see that, is that line totally forced? So queen D3.
Queen D3, not necessarily king G6 might walk into this H3 idea, but okay, let's do it again. H3, G takes, and G4. So white's idea would be to play king to H2, and one day maybe swing a rook over to the G file, and suddenly black's king might get caught tactically over here on the G file. So
this actually looks kind of promising. Maybe black should improve upon, white should improve upon, black should improve upon our play.
So maybe after queen D3, we'll have to just drop our knight back for, it's a temporary dropping back with a knight, just so that the pawn on F5 is protected.
Yeah, because that H3 is a very, very specific move. It's not like you can play it here. It was all based on the idea that my king was on G6.
And potentially vulnerable, exactly.
Yeah, and you were mentioning the glacial pace of black's attack, so it's not, time is not of the essence here.
Maybe in this position, because the move knight F8 would interfere with the natural idea of bringing the rook to H8, maybe I'll choose another spot for my knight, square for my knight, knight C7. So again, very clear idea of rook H8, rook H5.
Another question is to what extent is queen takes F5 a threat? Because we could consider queen takes F5, knight D4, like suppose...
Rook C8.
Yeah, suppose we just make a random move here.
Well, rook c8 is not quite a random move. It actually is probably a very good move.
Well, then you certainly can take on f5,
Indeed.
yeah. But I was thinking that even if we didn't have the pressure on that piece, even after rook c1 or a defensive move or something, we might be able to tactically hold on just by knight takes d4 and knight f3 stuff as well.
Right, so let's just make a move for black so that we can explain what Jennifer has in mind. Jennifer has this tactic, knight takes d4, and so she saw that she has a Zwischenzug.
Although we don't even need it here because you can also, you don't have enough pressure on the knight on d4. We can also just take back on d7 perhaps.
Oops, sorry, I meant a recapture here
so
as opposed to jumping in immediately to f3.
And all of black's pieces are just beautifully placed here.
Exactly.
Knight f3 being a threat and knight f3 and d4 coming, it just looks pretty ugly.
Exactly.
Rook takes c3 a threat as well.
So white's piece is misplaced, and have we seen the move rook c8? No, well, first of all, we haven't seen the move queen d3 yet.
Yeah, so queen d3, king g6 seems like a lemon, but if black just plays normally, then...
Queen d3, rook c8. That
can
looks very, very
continue.
good. Well, on the other hand, I mean, in such positions, Tigran Petrosian would often find an opportunity to play a move like rook e5 here, but that would entail dropping the bishop back, and I still like this. I like rook h8 actually better than rook c8, but rook c8 with the idea of coming rook c4 also looks very compelling, just going after this pawn on d4, which has been the Achilles heel in White's position.
I'm so sure now you wanted to play rook e5, right?
Yeah, but I wanted to do it when I had something more, like there was a king on g6 or something like here. I was just saying that rook e5 is a kind of a positional exchange sacrifice, but nothing going on anymore after just takes. If I take with the d pawn, well, you may play d4 and snap this guy over here. This knight on e6 is a tremendously strong blockading piece.
Certainly if you took with the f pawn.
And let's
and
see.
we do have the move queen d3 has been played by Nakamura.
Okay, so we have seen the move g5, g4, queen d3.
And rook c8 quick response by Fabiano.
Rook c8 has been played. So Hikaru facing serious problems because we're seeing all of these wonderful choice ideas, if you will, for black in this position, and White's pieces don't make a very good impression. I see Hikaru as being in big trouble.
Look at every piece, and every one of White's pieces seems weaker than Black's.
Well, in a sense, the rook on e1 is not very effective because all of the business squares on the e file are blocked or protected. The queen on d3 is tied to the knight on c3. The knight on c3 itself is unstable, and there's a potential weakness on the pawn on b5 and just rook c4 and all. Black just plays natural moves. He doesn't have to do anything extra special, and White is getting himself tied up here. It looks bad. Going around the horn for a moment.
Yeah, let's see how we're doing.
We did see this trade. Let's go back to the game of Magnus Carlsen, queen d4, queen e5 by Magnus, provoking the move f4. I suppose there was a specific reason why he wanted to provoke that move. And the rook d7 to c7, getting out of the way of e5, protecting the bishop. And let's see, has Levon played? No, Levon Aroni into play. Clearly, rook takes d6, plays into Black's hands. After bishop takes e4, he's traded off a potentially weak pawn on d6 for this powerful pawn on e4. And although this pawn is passed, it may be more of a liability than an asset.
Right.
So Levon, Magnus playing well.
So Black is good today.
Meanwhile,
in Topalov's game against Maxime Vachier-Leroy, we've had a flurry of moves.
All right. When we left it way back in these parts,
yes.
We had seen this.
And we were trying to figure out how either player could improve their position, pointing out no real pawn breaks and no real way to attack either king very easily.
Right.
It does look like Topalov has dig deep and tried to stick his h-pawn up the board. So let's see how that turned out for him.
Right. I think this was a misjudgment, miscue by Max, rook f6. Perhaps more likely he should have played queen e7 and rook c5 immediately. Rook f6 turned out to be a waste of tempo. This was a nice idea by Topalov. He's going to play queen f2. That provoked the move b6. And now after rook b5, Black found himself tied down against this pawn on b6, and he wanted to get rid of this rook.
Uncoordinated, but we're still trying to figure out how to improve this position. So h5.
So finally, Black wasted a lot of moves with his rook to get rid of the rook on b5. And in the meanwhile, the white queen has made a huge appearance on the e6 square.
I'm sure h5, this is something we definitely want to get done. That's why with your rook, when your rook was on f6, you were kind of shutting down those ideas.
Exactly. Queen came over to c7, king a2, and this is the position we've reached on the board. And no question about it, Veselin has improved his position, and Max is under pressure.
That's
Maurice, Your thoughts?
Well, in that position, queen f7, trading queens looks quite possible, but he has to be careful, right? So that position is interesting. However, the position with Caruana and Nakamura is even more interesting by a long way. Let's take a look at this. Rook to c1 has been played, and I was just about to say the best line seems to be an aggressive move, and Fabiano has found it. Rook to c4, applying even more pressure, ignoring that pawn on f5. We saw in one of those lines you guys mentioned, queen takes f5 actually now loses. Game would be done after knight takes on d4, threatening the queen. The threats that would be happening along this long diagonal through to this piece, knight f3 check is a problem. In fact, after queen takes d7, simply capture back and leave white to wallow in his misery in this position. All kinds of discos threatening with this knight, either to b3, to f3. The threat that's going to happen on this knight, the passed pawn, black is just pushing white completely off the board. So here, after rook to c4, the best move seems to be knight back to e2, going in a shell, and also threatening this rook. And the key move here, an interesting move to find, is the move knight to c7. Now, will it be enough to win? Take a look at the line. Knight to c7, now attacking this pawn. If rook takes rook, winning the pawn temporarily, then knight takes b5, and now black is hitting this pawn on a3 and this pawn on d4. Suddenly, all of black's pieces having a pincer effect on this pawn. If this pawn goes to a4, now we see a massive exchanges, and this would be quite interesting, this endgame, where even though black is up a pawn, the question is he in fact winning this position? A move like a5, rook here, and now rook to e5, and black will eventually gain a passed pawn on this side. It's one of those rook and pawn endings. Is it winning for black? That's the question Fabiano wants you to ask, because that means there's only two results possible. Either he draws or he wins. White is definitely in trouble, and Fabiano looking super calm knowing that to be the case, while Nakamura extremely concerned. Guys?
That's right. Nakamura turning red, and he's going to have to dig deep with his defensive skills here. We do have a nice shot here of the chess pieces, and one of our friends on Twitter said these chess pieces look really awesome. They should be the new Staunton standard set.
In fact, they are. The House of Staunton set, they were designed by Frank Camerata, and they were specially commissioned a year ago for the original, the first Sinquefield Cup. They're the only pieces in the world that work with the DGT boards that are beautifully designed, and instead of using the DGT pieces, which I don't like one single bit, these are some of the most beautiful pieces ever crafted.
Yeah, you want to feel it when you make the move rook c4,
oh,
right?
That's they're beautifully weighted, by the way.
On c4.
They feel so good. And I remember I actually had a little session. Sorry, I stole your place there a little bit. I was trying to teach Rex, well, not teach, I wanted to show him a game that Hikaru missed a win against Magnus Carlsen. And we were at his home and we were playing the pieces, and I said, Rex, this is a really nice set. And he said, yeah, they're from the Sinquefield Cup. So they really are beautiful. I think there's only 25 in the world. I may be wrong about that.
All the players got one last year.
Oh, that was what a gift. What a gift.
That was part of the opening ceremony.
The drawing of lots,
right?
Yes, yes. So.
And here they are. Let's take a look and keep with that game.
Knight c7, by the way.
Knight e2 was played.
Caruana had seen that in this position he has this beautiful move, knight c7, willingly trading this d5 pawn for the b5 pawn, and in that whole variation that...
right, because the queen needs to stay on d7 to keep an eye on f5.
Precisely. Well, in that variation that Maurice was pointing out, that rook ending, if you will, I mean, only two results are possible: black wins or draws.
Well, it's nice how black's really playing on both sides of the board here, because he's kind of hinting, he's focusing on the c file now, but we also saw a lot of variations where he was focusing on the h file.
Exactly. So comprehensively outplayed by Fabiano.
Quickly, Nakamura has returned his knight to c3.
After knight c7, the move played by Hikaru was he played knight on e2, back to c3. Well, very nice. Well, he defends the b5 pawn. Aha, so the line would be knight takes b5, and there's a pawn on f5 hanging.
Yeah, which
so
is hanging on all of our variations.
We can't cash in our chips because f5 is hanging. So we first have to do something, either like king g6, or maybe, again, we could even consider rook h8 once again. But it seems to me that after knight c3, lots of juicy choice moves. I actually like this move, rook c8.
Although perhaps at this point, so now maybe we can play something like a4 now that our knight on c3 is protecting the a4 square. Earlier we couldn't do that.
Right, but then you're really stuck here. This knight on c3 is really stuck. I can return with knight e6.
And again, queen f5, knight, well, we're just hanging everything.
Right, we're hanging everything on c3. And by the way, when the knight does return, I've got this idea of knight takes d4. Looks like white would have to retreat his knight once more. A lot of toing and froing, and I think that black's actually improving his position with each pair of moves that are being played in this game.
Well, yeah, boy, it does feel good to, even though you don't have light squared bishop, you're actually dominating the light squares here.
Right.
So definitely Fabiano having a lot of fun. And we have a lot of nicknames for him, right? Mr. Perfect, Fabulous Fabiano. Somebody else said that he's known as Don Fabiano.
Don Fabiano.
So we're going to have to keep adding more and more. The stronger you get, the more nicknames you have.
There you go. The one other final thought that I think is really worth mentioning. When you have such a structure, by the way, what's the perfect outpost for your knight? The e4 square. The pawns on d5 as well as f5 give black fantastic control over the e4 square. A compelling circuit to try to get on with your knight is to go knight e8, anticipating an opportunity of simply planting on e4. So just a lot of great opportunity, it appears to me, for Fabiano. Not so many good options at all for America's #1, Hikaru Nakamura.
Nope, our friend Lawrence Trent, the IM from Verdun, he says that Nakamura is in horrible shape right now. Just shove all in on Fabiano. It's not even a coin flip now, more like one of those ace-queen versus king-9 suited spots, which makes sense to our poker players in the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
But what he's saying is that Nakamura is going to be busto if he doesn't get really aggressive here.
Well, but I'm sitting there saying I don't see the aggression. I mean,
there's no way really. Knight c3 and a4. It's
we all understand when we have to go desperado mode, but I don't see really opportunities for such a demonstration. I think Fabiano has an iron grip, if you will, on the position. Maurice, are you with me on this one?
I'm all in too. I mean, it's all Fabiano in this game so far. It's definitely the case that Nakamura is playing for a draw now. He realizes that the exchanges he made early in the game did not work out. Remember we talked about that dark square weakness that could pop up after he captured the bishop on g6, that light square bishop, and it's shown itself not only in the dark squares, but also on the light squares he had to concede with the exchange of bishop takes on f5. So he is definitely in some trouble. I don't think that it's necessarily lost, but the way Fabiano is playing right now with this incredible form, it just suggests that he is so confident, so calm. Look at him get up from the board like, I got this under control. You're the one protecting the position. I'm the one with the initiative, and Nakamura has to defend. Despite the fact that he has only 10 minutes on his clock, Carrano feels like he can get up and take a stroll. I would like to point out, it seems as though these players are observing him more than anything else. If you look at the game between Levon and Magnus Carlsen, it looks like Carlsen was trying to get something going, but nothing has really come of it. Despite having split the pawns here on c4, black is not producing anything scintillating in this position, and it's looking very, very equal this game, looking like both sides unable to do anything, headed towards a draw. And this position here, Topalov is really trying to make something happen, now bringing his king up to b3, but this dark square blockade seems difficult to break. So it's almost as though the other tables don't even matter. It's all about one dude right now in the tournament, and it's Caruana, and they're watching him play otherworldly chess Carlsen yesterday said he's just playing wonderfully. That's it. There's nothing to say about it. And his confidence shows it. He's just sure of himself and making moves that are just first-class moves and decisions time and time again, and putting pressure on his opponent while his opponents are just wondering what they need to do to stop this Fabiano storm. Guys?
Well, the rest day, they're going to need it. This is
recalibrate and rethink what we've been witnessing after the first half of the event. It's been nothing short of extraordinary.
And even without peace sacrifices today, we might see plenty of decisive games. I mean, this one could go decisively, and the other two easily could as well. So might not be like the round 3, but this could be just as exciting in the next hour, so definitely don't go anywhere. Now, I really like Fabiano Caruana and Nakamura's games. It looks like Nakamura is still puzzling over whether to play A4 or if he has some way to make things a little bit more interesting, because as you point out, A4, even though it defends the pawn, it actually makes the position even more passive, because now our knight on C3 is just simply watching.
Is tied down to the pawn on A4.
We've been having problems with that knight all game. And here I like your idea of knight 8 relocating to E4 earlier. I mean, that just looks so juicy. And all of black's pieces, again, better than every single one of white's pieces.
Absolutely. So, super compelling. Maurice, you've got something to share.
Breaking news?
Breaking news, absolutely. Just what I was saying, one game is headed towards a draw. Suddenly, Aronian, did he lose his mind? He played a huge move, a sacrifice. In this position, he played the move C5. C5, giving away this C-pawn, and now playing the move rook to C4, trying to get his pawn back, but it doesn't look like it's going to be that easy to do after rook to D7 in this position. Now, it looks as though this E-pawn is going to come under fire no matter what he does. If he tries to double and not accept the trade, then suddenly rook to D4, and there are threats. No, yes, rook to D4 would be a strong move going all the way through. His rook coming down into the position, a threat to this pawn. I'm not sure what he should do here after rook takes rook. Black can throw in this Wissenjug with a check, and how do you deal with the rook on the rank? You're taking back, you're winning the A-pawn. It looks as though black may be winning. Well, maybe winning is too strong a word, but why did he sacrifice his pawn when it didn't look as though he was in that much trouble? Maybe he was afraid E5 was going to happen earlier. Let's back up to here. Maybe he was afraid that the king was going to come and E5 was going to happen somehow and undermine this. I don't actually know. I don't see what he was worried about, but he has played a move of great consequence, and Magnus has played the move bishop B5. Let me get to that position. Bishop to B5 here, and actually just keeping his pawn. Bishop to B5, defending the pawn and asking, why did you sacrifice it? Well, the computer is saying only a slight edge for black in this position, but a very surprising move in this moment. And not only in this game as the game changed dramatically, but also in the Caruana game, H3 and King H2 takes and King H2 have been played. And here the computer is definitely loving black's position. Nakamura going whole hog with this move, H3, feeling like he was going to get blown off the board or pushed off the board slowly. He decided to go for it with H3 and King H2. It looks as though 2 games with black now maybe ending on the victorious side or leaning that way as this round reaches time control. Guys?
Right. We were just saying that Nakamura might not want to suffer after the move A4, so instead playing H3, an active move that you looked at earlier when we played the King G6 move.
Well, we were talking about desperados and the need for white to mix things up before he just gets steamrolled, and H3 seemed like the only option. So GH, King H2, and
but how does this actually give white active play? That's my question. I mean, I still feel like, okay, you didn't play A4, but I still can try this knight E8, D6 idea.
It's true. I'm not going to suggest for a single second that this gives white active play so much as at least a plan.
Yes,
White's intention, for what it may be worth, is to get in sometime a G3, G4 with or without a rook G1 as a preparatory move. But there was simply nothing else for him in the position, and so he hopes he can make a virtue out of necessity. In the meanwhile, Fabianos is just playing very quickly.
Here so that if you play G4, we can capture it, and then when you play rook G1, we just post up with f5.
Well, he has
Yeah,
played
this just,
something. I thought he played a capture, GH3, King H2. I was looking at the webcam.
No, now it's black's move now.
Right, and I thought I saw a
and
capture.
he has taken on b5.
Right, that's what I thought. I thought I saw something disappearing from the board, and so Fabiana has the following in mind. And check this out. There's a nasty check, maybe on e2.
Or just rook c2, rook c1, and then queen e2 is what you were thinking, right?
No, I was thinking that there was just going to be a check on e2, which was devastating. For example, let me just show you.
Here.
Takes, check, threatening queen g2 mate. And in case of h3, notice that the bishop is undefended, and I'll just pick up a piece for free after queen f1 check and queen takes c1. So a very forcing line, and I think black is simply winning material after queen takes f5, rook takes e1. Jen, have I missed something?
And then if we take with the, so if we take immediately here instead of taking with the rook, what if we take with the bishop?
If we take with the bishop, oh my, I just didn't like
you
the
just
idea.
have rook takes, well, you don't have rook takes c1 quite, because after rook c1, queen b2, you can stick a piece in c2.
Which is a good thing, okay. But what if I take an, no. I'm sorry, I forget that my rook on c8 was hanging.
Yeah, you're right.
I was going to take something. Okay, just a second. Did I do something wrong? Because Fabio, oh, I have queen b2 check.
Just right here.
Right. I beg your pardon. Simply queen b2 check.
And that transposes to the variation you were looking at before, pretty much, where you're just winning on c1 and there's no real perpetuals after queen g4 check.
Clearly, and we know that Hikaru is very, very expressive. Look at him at the board. He's got that double head shake thing going on that he sometimes does when he realizes he's overlooked something. And, well, queen b2 just ends the game. That's it. Nothing to discuss. So after knight takes b5, Hikaru, recognizing knight b5, rook b5 is game over, he's got to come up with something, and at the moment, he's 2 pawns down.
Well, yeah, knight b5, queen b5, instead of taking on f5, we'll have to do something besides that. But
right, but 2 pawns is 2 pawns here. Ooh, and there's a rook c2 check
rook c2 with
type of tactic.
Two pieces, but that would just be 2 rooks, I guess, after queen c2, so maybe we could do even better.
Mm-hmm. Oh my, and knight b5 has been played. We'll see the recapture by Fabiano as soon as he returns to the board. Knight b5, queen b5, and again the head shake by Hikaru signaling that he's not a happy camper.
Yes, 5 minutes left for Hikaru in the position. He has made a move quite quickly, so he just took on h3. So king takes h3 has been played.
King takes h3 at least has the benefit of avoiding this check.
Right, but we can play rook h8 check as well. What does that lead to?
I was wondering about queen b2 immediately.
Just cutting off the king before you play check.
Right.
Threatening.
So, well, in fact, threatening mate.
That's not typical.
Queen b2.
Oh, I like that. Put that on the board. Rook takes c4. Rook h8 mate. I like that.
Right. Rook takes a, and thank
that
you.
one you don't see every day.
Please sign my score sheet. Check Hakimati. So, oh my. So we have seen king takes h2. That has been played. We're giving a glance at queen c2.
Queen b2 here,
queen
right.
b2, and first glance.
That's looks like fun.
Over. But we do have rook e2. Thank goodness. Boy, I was about to say, that just looked like over. We do have a defensive reaction, queen, rook e2 to that. So maybe it's not all over yet. That's still an healthy extra pawn for black, and he has the attack. So by rights, black is winning here, but we're looking for a knockout punch. And for those of you who are twittering,
Wait, can we play rook? We can play rook c2, and then we have that same beautiful mate. Look at that.
Ooh, I like that. That's a nice.
I just want to see that checkmate on the board.
Exactly. So
that's even more unusual, right?
So you cannot take my queen. Queen takes b5, and once again I'm victimized by rook h8 mate. But can I take the rook?
Yeah.
Takes. Now this might be a case of the queen dominating the two
But you
rooks.
might want something that's even bigger knockout. There might be something. Is there a bigger knockout? What do you think, Maurice?
Well, the computers are not finding any bigger knockout, but there is a move that is actually the opposite of what you guys just got, which is you got the queen versus the two rooks, but black could get the queen versus the two rooks if he chooses to. Rook takes on c1, sacrificing the queen here, and after queen takes queen, rook takes rook, and saying, well, my pieces are much better than yours. A move like bishop to f2, then rook to e4, eyeballing this pawn, and even after the move queen takes on d5, and this is all deep stuff, the move king to g6, and now black has dominated the position, has solidified his position, and now his rooks are going to get crazy. One rook coming down to c2, the other rook coming down to e2, looking to try to get some energy here, the pawn being weak, maybe just rook c3, picking off this pawn. Of course, the queen is a very active piece, but if she can't get around inside here, then maybe there is no perpetual check. There are desperate moves being played now by the computer, moves like g4, just trying to get the position busy. And after rook check, king g2, but after rook takes on f4, it looks like it's black who's controlling the position completely. This just looks good for black, but again, that queen, we know, always perpetual check chances, perpetual attack chances, and does Fabiano have to go for this? Not at all. In the very first position, the drop back to right here after kings, queen d7 is just, I'm up a pawn, thanks, I got it in my hands, and I'll work this slowly but surely. But there is an opportunity here to get those two rooks and try to prove that the two rooks beat the queen. Guys?
Nice variation. I like that rook on e4 variation. So always nice choices for Fabiano. And before we started today's show, I was talking to Maurice, and Maurice was saying that this was going to be a decisive game. And I said, I understand that it may be a decisive game, but my question for you, Maurice, was would Hikaru get an advantage out of the opening? We both looked at each other. So when has Fabiano had a position that he was under pressure? When did he have a disadvantage in the first four games? We couldn't think of a single one. And this opening, he played it well. He was solid. And again, it appears to me that he was simply better, and he's better now, and he may just simply be winning. So fabulous.
So if he gets 10 points, will he overtake Magnus's rating?
If he gets 10 points, I'm going to take the ice bucket challenge 5 times. You know, like that's just not going to happen. I mean, what we're seeing is simply remarkable.
Oh, well, nobody would have thought that even 5 points would ever have happened.
No.
Absolutely incredible.
Wow.
I think if he gets 10 points.
And we do have a result.
A result in Topalov's game against
Maxime
Bashir-Legrave.
The players agreed to a draw
I'm
neither player.
Sure what happened. Let's see what the final position is.
Well, this is the final position, and let's just see, have they been moving?
Is this the final position?
They have been moving back and forth or not? Rook b8 draw agreed? I don't see a win at the moment for
No, white
Topalov.
actually played rook f5 first, it seems.
The last move was rook f5?
That's what I have on my board, rook f5 over here.
I see. So rook f5 was the last move, and rook f5?
It seems like a strange moment for a draw to be agreed because white's position looks really, like all the white pieces are so well placed.
I think
it looks like he might have won the game, but resign here.
Resigns is a remarkable decision. I mean, I can understand that black has issues, but resigns?
Yeah, that's what we're getting word, that this game has ended in a victory for white. So let's figure out rook f5. You're coming in with the rook f7 and h6.
Okay,
and
well, let's
suppose
say
black
I
plays
play
h6 himself. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I'm assuming rook f7, and maybe the queen comes around.
And then bishop d7 and
rook
bishop
e8.
d7 or bishop e8.
and you just get black king on the light square.
I see. Well, bishop e8 always threatens rook f8 is the problem. So maybe actually bishop e8 immediately is the problem with the threat of rook f8 followed by bishop g6 mating.
Well,
or queen
yes,
g6 mating.
Exactly.
Or queen g8 mating. One of those. You have to pick between one of those three.
Wow, remarkable.
So rook f5. What an interesting rover.
What, right.
Not one that we normally see, right?
So
rook f5 just resigns, huh?
Well, Maxine just totally
There's no way.
underestimated this attack. Well, again, resigns looks...
So queen c8.
Well,
but, oh, wait. Why trade? Maybe
well, I was thinking that the black rook might come around here after a trade to the b7 square. You think
I
that
was trying to
maybe
play
by
bishop b7, but you just have queen g8 kind of insisting on the trade? Is that what you were thinking?
Well, I'm
I
not
could
sure
play rook
what I'm
f7.
thinking, actually. I'm still a little bit confused by it all. I can imagine that any trade of major pieces, especially queens and rooks, I can see king c4 to b5, and definitely white has a great positional grip on the position, but resigns. That's
Why the queen c8 seems like the try, right?
Right. Well, at least you would make such a move. Maybe sometimes you get disgusted with a position, you're not pleased with how you play, and you give it up. Peter Spindler has been notorious for actually resigning positions prematurely, but
Is that why everybody loves him?
we all love Peter.
Yeah, he's very popular. He's been actually annotating the Sinquefield Cup games for Chess24.
Has he been really? I didn't know that.
So you got to check that out. Yeah, Jan
man.
Gustafsson and him are kind of tag teaming these reports, and Peter's offering some analysis.
Oh, how sweet. Really a great annotator. I love his style and his explanations.
And sense of humor.
And sense of humor. So, oh boy, I will quickly check that out myself. I've been doing a lot of surfing on the internet chess sites and reading the reports, but I didn't realize, shame on me, that Peter was active.
And Maurice, some insight into why Black didn't try queen c8 and struggle on.
Well, it simply would have been a struggle. There was no reason for him to resign immediately, but it is very bad, and the computers are already giving him almost 2 pawns down as a deficit. So it's clear at the 2770 level that this is bad for Black, that it's really simply resignable, and any move would have been a struggle. But for the fans and us lesser lights grandmasters, we do want to see some moves get played in order to show why this was indeed a victory. And it's kind of tough when you have to explain to the fans that the guy resigned down no material whatsoever, and not any prospect of losing material in like the next move or the next 2 moves. So queen c8 was the only way to continue the game. Queen c8 was a defensive move, and the simple continuation for white was to trade and play rook to f7, and suddenly his rook's going to show up on this square. A move like rook to b8 makes sense, and now any bishop move makes sense. And here comes the king. I mean, the king's just going to march in, and this pawn looks like it's going to drop. But still, why resign right now? Make a few moves. I remember one game, I think it was Judith Polgar played, where it was made on the board if she played the next move, but she just played it to let the fans see that it was actually made after a beautiful sequence. Maybe she was the one who was white. I don't remember, but it just, to end the game this prematurely seems premature. And we should play some moves out at least, and when you go down a pawn maybe, then resign. But this seems quite confusing for most fans, to be sure, despite the fact that it is definitely a big advantage for white. Guys?
Confusing for me too. I didn't, truly, when I saw the players signing score sheets and the fact that one player wasn't down any material, I really thought wrongly that the players had agreed to a draw. So I wouldn't have minded seeing a few moves there to explain what was going on. Well, we'll get the players' impressions, and obviously Maxine was absolutely certain he was losing, because normally you only resign when you're 150% sure that you're going to lose the game. In the meanwhile,
yeah, let's take a look in to Nakamura.
And the meanwhile, after having won the pawn on b5, king takes h3, Fabiano didn't go for any of those two rooks versus queen, either playing with the rooks or with the queen. Instead, he just said, I'm a pawn up, as Maurice mentioned. I'll take the extra pawn, I'll play queen d7, and I'll consolidate my rook on c4 with the move b5. I'm a nice pawn up. And by the way, again, I'll just boldly point out the obvious. This bishop on e3 is a spectator. It's a very, very passive piece. Virtually all of black's pawns are on light squares, so the bishop on e3 can't attack any of them. And conversely, all of white's pawns are on dark squares. So nothing to play for in this position. Just a miserable one pawn behind for Hikaru.
Defensive task indeed, and
exactly.
He did get defensive here, playing rook to b1.
He did play rook
and,
b1.
That was his 40th move, and Caruana in turn played his 40th move, the solid a6, and now the players have extra time to think, and Nakamura not looking happy at all.
During his extra time to think, Hikaru is going to recognize that all of the threats, all of the potential threats belong to his opponent. Rook c4 to c3, attacking the queen with a tempo, eyeballing the pawn on a3. The other rook taking the square of its colleague on c4. And again, I'll also point out that the obvious e4 square, as before, whether for a knight or even for a rook, is very compelling. You can get a rook on e4, and well, I think this is simply positional overkill, frankly. I think that Hikaru's position is not only terrible, but he's material down as well. Talk about a position that's resignable. Well, here you go. It wouldn't be outlandish to think that white has seen enough.
But I don't think he will.
No, of course not. He will fight on, but I'm seeing this position as truly resignable. Let's go to the game that we thought was going to be the marquee matchup of the round when we saw the pairings at the start. World's #1, Magnus Carlsen, world champion, and #2, Levon Aronian, when they entered the tournament. Maurice was stunned that Levon had offered this pawn with this, maybe he lost some nerve in the position with the move c4, c5, because that looks like a very shaky move. World champion Magnus Carlsen said, thank you very much. I like accepting pawns. Bishop b5, c4, e5, and it has to be said, this is a very beautiful bishop, and this pawn on e5 limits the opportunities of the knight. Rook c5, stepping off the square, giving the knight potential to go to c7. Knight? Wow, knight c2. I must say that that move strikes me as very strange. Knight c2. I thought the knight stood very well there. I thought that Levon his idea was to go and pick this pawn off with moves like rook c2, bishop f1, bishop c4, knight c2. Okay, I'm confused. Knight c7, knight d4, knight d5, and...
No, bishop takes d5, rook takes d5.
Right, well, is there a choice? Well, I guess I could potentially take this guy first. Knight takes b5, rook takes b5, but bishop takes d5. If I have to play bishop takes d5 and allow this pin, I'm a pawn down and not very happy here at all. Although I do have king e3 for the moment, but still, it looks like everything's in black's favor here, no?
Sure.
Just very simply, this looks tremendous for Magnus. So Levon, wow. Levon in trouble here in this fifth round game.
And we do have bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, knight f3 on the board.
On the board now. Knight, oh, not king e3, but knight f3 immediately? Okay. Knight f3. And normally speaking, the rook and bishop combination are better than the rook and knight combination. So I would say technically, without really looking at the position too deeply, this should be winning for Magnus because he's got the right combination of pieces, rook and bishop, and he's got a pawn. Now that doesn't mean that white doesn't have his chances as well. This pawn on
sticking
e5.
it on d6 potentially.
Yeah, well, this pawn structure is very solid, and if he could ever somehow worm his way and somehow win this pawn, he might equalize. But definitely, Levon desperately trying to hold this position is basically what's coming down to. And
That's right, and we have our guest, Grandmaster Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, French #1.
Okay.
And he's getting set up with his interview with Maurice Ashley, so we are going to go to them now. Welcome back to the show, Maxime, with Maurice.
Thanks, Jen. I'm with Grandmaster Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Seems like a premature moment to resign in this position. The rest of us were a bit confused. Can you explain why you stopped now?
Well, simply, it's quite simple. I have absolutely no counterplay, and his rook comes over to the 7th rank. So if I exchange queens with queen c8, he will just take on c8, play rook f7, then rook b7, and voila.
Did you play rook b8 in this position?
Yeah, but then the king comes over, king c4, king d5. I mean, the problem is my king cannot move, and I would simply start collecting the weak pawns because my bishop on e5 was holding the position, but now it's not enough. Actually, I mean, I'm not sure it changed anything to the outcome of the game, but after queen a6, I just played queen c5, and I bled that after rook g5. My bishop is pinned, so I don't have bishop takes c3 trick.
Rook g5 in this position.
Yeah.
You thought you may be unable to take, but you have this pin in the position.
Yeah, I forgot about rook g5 simply. Well, anyway, my position was probably lost by that point.
Did you feel that you were okay coming on the opening? We thought that you had a solid position.
Yeah, I thought I was okay, but then I underestimated this position started from here. I thought it might be quite easily holdable, but it turns out it's not. I underestimated white's advantage, and well, Veselin played well after that. I think, I don't know exactly where it went wrong, but it's probably between, I don't know, move 15, but it's a bit early to go wrong. I think maybe move 18, yeah? I mean, knight h5 was probably a bad plan. I should probably try to manage play d5. So, I mean, my first idea was rook f7, but I thought for some reason that after bishop g5, well, I don't have d5 and it might be a bit unpleasant. Maybe it's the case, but it's definitely what I should have done.
So you were the only one who was at 50% with Caruana playing enormously well. Now you're at -1 with a big group, and Topalov has come to 50%. Caruana looks like he's winning his game. If he wins, he's going to be 2.5 points ahead of the field. Will the tournament effectively be over?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, there's no way anyone's coming back from 2.5 points lead. He has 3 whites. I don't see any reason why he should start playing badly now. So, I mean, he's been pretty effective, and I think he will win the tournament outright. I mean, simply probably at least by 1.5 point margin, at least, I think.
At least. What is your impression of this start by this young player?
Well, I mean, he's been absolutely ruthless, simply, and no mistake. I mean, his game against Aronian was extremely impressive, the way he managed to put pressure without any rest for Levon. So, and today I think actually he had a slightly worse position, to be honest, but then I didn't really see what happened and how he managed to get up to 2 pawns up, and well, no, it should be effectively over because he's only a pawn up, but simply there's no way why it's.
He's just played this move queen e6 intending to go into e4. It was just like total domination.
Yeah, probably you have to give up 2 works. I mean, I'm just wondering if after bishop d2, yeah, rook takes d4 is winning, yeah. So then simply queen e4, and he has complete control over the c file, so it should be over.
You guys are all of the same generation. You, Caruana, Carlsen. what is it going to take for you to catch these two players who are clearly just showing their dominance at 2800s? Right now, the only two 2800s in the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're clearly the best players at the moment. I mean, Magnus is not playing so well in this tournament, but he's proven so much already. And well, Fabiano is on his way to proving a lot. I think I need to play more tournaments of this caliber. I'm really grateful to have been invited here. I mean, it gives me a lot of experience, and well, some maybe difficult games, but of course it's the only way I'm going to learn a lot. I mean, and really playing 10 top games against these players.
Clearly. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We wish you the best in improving and in the rest of your games.
Thank you very much.
A gracious Grandmaster Maxime Vachier-Lagrave after a tough loss. Guys, back to you.
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you, Max.
Yes, thanks. And
well, the first player who said, "Oops, it's over." If Mr. Perfect goes 5-0, Maxime Lagrave doesn't see any chance of anybody in the field catching him, and I'll just second that emotion. I mean, unless he has a complete and utter collapse in the second leg, he's got the tournament. He's got the $100,000 first, and he's got a stranglehold on number 2 in the world as well.
but we'll have to wait until it's mathematically impossible until we announce it, because that's what we do.
That's what
now,
we
speaking
do.
about mathematical, I'm curious, what are the chances of Fabiano passing Magnus in rating in this tournament? That would be very difficult because there's still about 40 points.
Right. It would
But
require,
it would require Fabiano to win against
collapse.
Magnus.
Yeah, but
Again,
it would require a total collapse of Magnus in the second half, as well as, like you say, just some unbelievable Fischer-esque, Kasparov-esque finish.
And fewer than 40 points separate them now, though. Incredible. And that's not counting the win, presumably, that Fabiano is likely to record after his game against Nakamura today.
Right.
Now, we were just...
And I don't see a move, by the way, in the game for Hikaru Nakamura. As Maxime was mentioning, if you have to drop back with your bishop,
rook takes c1,
then rook takes c1. And this, 2 rooks versus queen, isn't even close to that previous position where there was some g4 ideas.
There's no counterplay at all for white here, no way to get at the black king.
And in the meanwhile, the rooks are just coming in fast, hot and heavy down the c-file, and black's king is perfectly
this
safe.
Would be totally over, indeed.
Right.
Now, we do have our other player from today, Grandmaster Veselin Topalov.
In second place,
yes,
let me point out the obvious.
Scoring this big victory with white today against MBL, and he's with Maurice Ashley.
I am with Grandmaster Veselin Topalov of Bulgaria. As Yaz said, in second place after living in the basement a while. I think they've let you up into the first floor maybe. How's it feel to have bounced back after such a tough start?
Well, I mean, okay, I'm just, you know, I think I was mainly lucky in my game against Hikaru, and that was the turning point. I mean, it's really made a difference because losing the first, in case of losing the first 3 games and then playing black against Magnus, that wouldn't be really fun. But then, okay, he missed his chance, and now, you know, I'm somehow on the second place for the moment, but of course it's just, we're all very close. And then, of course, Fabiano looks like he's winning, and he's just playing a different tournament now.
Before we get to Fabiano, when did you feel like you had this game locked down, that you were in control of this position?
Well, I was very happy to get this position with opposite square bishops, because I felt like it was like risk-free, and I could play for really many moves. And some endings, even if I exchange all the pieces, then I could come with the king, you know, and collect his pawns. And that was one of the ideas I had. So that was when I really started to like my position, you know.
You definitely got some dominating chances. Were you surprised that he resigned at this exact moment?
Yeah, a little bit, because you know, the thing is that in the final position, his best move is to try to exchange the queens, which he rejected to do it for several times when he could have reached you know, also a bad position, but not so losing compared to the final position. So that was the reason probably he just didn't like to continue to suffer. But of course, I think I'm not even forced to exchange queens. It just there should be several ways of losing. But yeah, it's true. I was a little bit surprised. I thought, you know, it's never late to resign. So.
Right, you can play a few more moves. The fans certainly want to see it.
Exactly, so, but okay, sometimes it happens, yeah.
Well, now let's talk about Fabiano. I mean, what is going on with this young man? He's playing chess from another planet right now.
Well, I mean, okay, he's just very focused, well prepared, obviously, and he's playing very good ideas against, let's say, against yesterday. It was really quite deep what he did against Levon, and he's calculating really well, and again, very concentrated and focused. So it's not really a, you know, a big surprise, because even in Stavanger, the last tournament we played together, he started really well also. So in every tournament, he's fighting for the first place. But yeah, okay, 5 out of 5, it's quite a lot.
When you played in San Luis, the tournament that won you your world title, you started off quite hot as well. What's the feeling like when someone's playing this well? How do you, was the confidence high, or are you worried that you might play badly at some point? What is the feeling when you're doing well at the beginning of a tournament?
Well, I mean, it's quite inspiration. You know, when you, after every win, you get more and more confident. So it's like, I don't know how exactly to explain, but I don't think he's going to play worse. I mean, the only problem sometimes is not to start to think about the result and just to continue to play the same way. But for the moment, he's doing that, and I'm kind of happy that now we have a free day tomorrow. So he will not win 5 days in a row. So
6 days in a row.
Yeah, 6 days. So he could have 6 out of 7, but not you know, not 7 out of 7. So.
Okay, well, looking at this tournament now, last question for you: is it over?
I guess so. Well, for the first place, looks like yes, but well, again, I'm not really thinking about that.
Well, you're in second. I think second place is $70,000.
No, I don't think many of us think about money. Actually, I'm just enjoying the games, you know, and just play. But already for long, I'm not. I don't think it's a good idea to think about the prize money, and it just because, especially when you play so strong opponents, you shouldn't try to defend, you know, even when you're not in a perfect form. You should just continue to play, and it's not a good strategy to try to make draws, for example. So I think the next 5 rounds they'll be similar to the first, I expect.
Well, we have come to truly enjoy your style over the years. You've never been one to make draws, so we appreciate your coming back in this tournament, and we wish you the best of luck in the rest of your games.
Thank you.
The gracious Grandmaster, Vasily Topalov, sharing his insights into how to think about chess properly. Guys?
I want Veselin to leave without first sharing with us, because at the end of his game with Magnus Carlsen at the last round, Veselin and Magnus exchanged some words, and it appeared to us watching the monitors when Magnus suggested the move Rook C5, and Veselin realized, oh, I missed this great opportunity. Share with us your emotions and thoughts during that conversation.
Oh yeah, it happens that sometimes you just miss very simple move, you know, and well, it's in a way it's a little bit, it's normal that after a long game you miss, you get tired and you miss some moves. But of course, finally, I think it was not winning, so it wouldn't have changed the final result. But yeah, but you know, the thing is that you should at least consider such moves. And I just missed it. And it doesn't give to me a pleasant feeling, you know, that you just miss so simple moves. But yeah, I have to admit I'm not playing my best chess, so in a way it's normal.
Yeah, but you were able to shake it off and win today, so that just shows mental toughness.
Yeah, but even sometimes against Hikaru, you know, and even when you win, the feeling is not so good. So I know when you really a good, strong player, when it really plays well, I know how it should be, how chess should look like. You know, I've seen most of the strongest players playing against me or just playing in the tournament, so I know how, you know, strong play should look like. And
well,
definitely only Fabiano is showing it now. But okay.
Well, enjoy the rest of the day, and we expect to see your strong play come back.
Okay.
Guys?
Thank you, Veslan, for that explanation and for that lovely victory, which is very instructive. You know, a lot of people were saying all those sacrifices, but today,
but
the strategic lessons.
The domination on the light squares.
That's right.
You got your squares, the dark squares, I've got my squares.
And
now,
another person who had fun today in the light squares, Fabiano Caruana.
Right,
and
continuing.
Yeah, so we did go across that line with Rook C1 and getting the 2 rooks for the queen.
So when we left it, we saw this very nice little move, Queen E6, preparing the positional bone cruncher, Queen E4 check. Hikaru could not allow Queen E4. He dropped back with his bishop.
Jan Gustafsson was actually tweeting about this position after Bishop F2, and
Yes.
Rook C1, of course, is the most obvious move and very strong, right? But you can get away with playing Queen E4 here.
No way, really?
Isn't that funny?
How's that? So Queen
I think
E4.
so. The idea is that after you can take on E4 and then you're winning on C1 anyway.
So if I take this.
And then after takes on
so
D3,
D3.
Rook takes C8, D2.
Oh my goodness, my rook. How
kind of absurd that you could play Queen E4 check anyway.
Oh, that's a pretty variation.
It is. Unfortunately, it's completely unforced. So why would you ever even, you know, if you see if it leads to the same type of 2 rooks versus queen position that Rook takes C1 does.
I see. But still, Queen E4, very visual move.
Indeed, very.
Rook takes C1 was his choice, and
so
Rook
boring.
takes pawn takes.
He can't be Mr. Perfect anymore. He didn't play Queen E4 for the fans. Maurice?
Well, Mr. Perfect has a perfect move to force resignation right now. So check this out. In this position, after the sequence you just showed, G4 was played, Nakamura flailing, trying to get something going. Well, it turns out that it's over. It's over. If Fabiano finds this bone cruncher, bishop to H4, threatening to go to C2 and win a piece, bishop takes bishop, looks natural, and now rook HC3, and look who's trapped. The queen has nowhere to go in the 3rd rank, not the 4th rank, not the 1st rank, and if it heads to the 2nd rank, well, it's gone too, and it's time to resign. Bishop H4 is a killer, and all he has to do is find this move, the threat of rook down. There's no way to even move the king to go anywhere. These rooks are going to come down and wreak their vengeance after losing a queen. This is done. This is over. Bishop H4, and Mr. Perfect will be a perfect 5-0. Guys?
Now, he didn't play it, although I still believe he's going to remain perfect.
Well,
after G4, he simply took on G4, and his position is still crushing, even though, of course, the move Bishop H4 is very picturesque.
Right, Bishop H4, didn't see that one myself. I was actually, of course, I was happy to grab a pawn with F5 takes G4. I live for such pawn captures, but I was thinking that Rook on C1 to C2 with those ideas of Bishop H4 as well. They certainly look very compelling. But Bishop H4 is a beautiful shot. We should put that as a puzzle of the day for tomorrow. I mean, we'll tell you an exam is coming, and Bishop H4 is a nice shot. But of course, taking on G4, why not? And I think the only move for Hikaru, or at least his intended follow-up has to be something along the lines of queen e2.
He has played queen e2.
Yeah, exactly, queen e2 with the idea of either capturing this pawn or this pawn, which means that he doesn't have to resign. He still has some moves up his sleeve, but I just don't know how long he's going to last after, for example, a move like king f7. Pawn on g4 can't be captured thanks to rook g8.
You're ready to play a move like g3 at the right moment. And
I'm just still worried about rook c2, frankly, Jen.
Rook c2 in combination with g3.
Or bishop h4,
yeah.
what Maurice, or bishop d4, actually maybe even bishop takes d4 is quite a threat here as well. The same ideas of these rook c2, queen's trapped, or rather queen's pinned and lost. So Hikaru throwing out a desperado, a spike check or something
so
still to go.
Moving the king up, king forward probably with king g3, something like that.
King g3, well, yeah, I'm going to reel you back in, I think, with a move like rook c2 here, or I could go rook, pardon me, I meant to say, I could also go a move like rook c3 check, force you back in, because I don't think you can step up to the
check, and you got that made.
Exactly, the
but
old
when
two
we show
rook,
the kids.
the old two rook. Oops, that arrow was supposed to go there. Pardon me about
Ladder
that.
me that.
Ladder me that. So. King has king f7 been played?
No,
Queen
not
e2.
yet. Queen e2 and now
Fabiano thinking,
move.
enjoying the moment, I would say, because after queen e2, I'm not even sure that king f7 is necessary. Maurice, what's your thoughts?
Well, guys, it seems as though Fabiano has erred significantly in this position where he was completely dominating. Bishop h4 was easily winning. He's now complicated his task quite a bit. Take a look at this. After queen back to e2 in this position, sorry, let me go here, queen e2, king f7 is the first move of the engine, making sure that you cannot capture on g4. Used to be that the engine was saying 2 pawns up and then some, easy win, and of course bishop h4 was just killing. But in this position after king f7, the queen can sneak back